All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're about to get started here. A few introduction notes before we do get started. First, my name is Joel Koepfler, and I'm the product sales lead for programmatic initiatives at PATTISON Outdoor. I wanted to take the opportunity now to say thank you to everyone who's joined our presentation today. We truly value both your business and your time, and in today's world, time is such a huge commodity, so again, thank you very much. Today, it's my pleasure to run you through Link, PATTISON Outdoor's mobile retargeting offering. This is a product that fits into a suite of things that we're doing at PATTISON in our continued evolution as an out-of-home media vendor and to further our position as Canada's leader in out-of-home. This webinar is intended to be an introduction to the product. We encourage you to post any questions that you might have about this webinar or the topic in general by submitting them into the comments section. After the webinar, we'll consolidate the group's Q&A and deliver responses along with the webinar presentation to everyone who has attended today. In addition, as always, please feel free to reach out to your sales reps should you have any individual questions or wish to learn more. Now, I think it would only be fair to begin the presentation by acknowledging just how exciting of a time it is for the out-of-home space. Out-of-home is truly going through a transformative moment. My role at PATTISON exists specifically because of these changes and the advancements that we're seeing. Our industry has seen rapid developments in the past few years, which can be seen in the advancement of new buying methods and the emergence of new data sources that allow us to better meet the advertising challenges of clients like yourselves. Now, one such advancement in the out-of-home space has been the use of mobile location data. Mobile location data is crucial for the Link product, so we'll definitely be diving into this later. But to start, just think of mobile location data as data received from a consumer's phone that we can use to understand where consumers are and where they have been in the real world. Now for PATTISON, this data represents a huge potential, both on the planning and the execution sides of our business, as our media is inherently in the real world. Overlaying this data on top of the traditional data sets that we've used in the past, we're now better able to understand who is actually going past our out-of-home locations. This allows us to do many things, including the ability to better optimize our out-of-home recommendations to you. So that would be on the planning side, or what I would call the pre-campaign phase, but we can also use mobile location data on the execution side as well. This is where mobile retargeting and Link fits in. Okay, so getting back on track to our presentation on mobile retargeting. So what is Link? Well, Link is a targeted programmatic mobile integration solution that leverages mobile location data and polygons, which are essentially custom out-of-home capture areas, to capture consumers that pass by out-of-home for future mobile targeting and tracking. Link allows advertisers to bring the offline and online media worlds together, creating multi-channel advertising campaigns while allowing for new data learnings to be integrated into campaign reporting. So I started off by mentioning that mobile location data is required for mobile retargeting and the Link product to work. So let's focus a little bit more on it. So if we remember the definition I provided, mobile location data is information that comes from a consumer's phone that can tell us where it is or where it has been in the real world. All devices that are connected to the internet can theoretically provide location data. Your desktop, your tablet, your connected car, your smartwatch, these all can and likely do provide location data regarding where they are. But most importantly for this conversation, so does your smartphone. So why is the smartphone so important? Now, to give credit where credit's due, many years ago, AOL prophesied that phones would become our constant companions. And you know what? They were 100% right. Our smartphones are always with us. They sit with us in our meetings, they're with us as we shop, and they're with us when we're at home. They're generally the first thing we look at in the morning and the last thing we look at night. Many of us literally sleep beside them. But most importantly for us in this conversation, mobile phones are with their owners as they're out of home. So if we can agree that these phones are always with us, we could start to make a pretty compelling argument that the bits and pieces of data they provide, if used properly, could tell us a lot about their owners. This is true when we also think about mobile location data that these devices provide. Now, our phones are constantly dropping breadcrumbs of location data throughout the day, a virtual path of data that can be used to trace our real-world footsteps. This data is being collected by our cell phone carriers and the apps that we have downloaded onto our phones. Cell phone carriers utilize this data to know where you are to provide cell service. Mobile apps use your location to offer the best user experience within their app. This is how your weather app would provide you the most relevant weather to the area that you're in, or how your Uber, Google Maps, or Waze shows your ETA based on where you're headed. These data breadcrumbs typically contain 3 pieces of information. The first is a latitude and a longitude, essentially a coordinate system that assigns a location to the breadcrumbs data. The second piece is what's called a timestamp. This provides a time to the breadcrumb that was dropped. And the third piece is a serial code that ties the data to a unique phone. The challenge here is that mobile location data can be attained in a variety of ways and methods, which each have different strengths and weaknesses. It's a pretty confusing world we've created, with tons of different suppliers saying that their data is better for one reason or another. So instead of highlighting all of the available types and methods to access this data, I think it would be better just to mention the best ways. What we want with our data is precision. We're trying to only retarget a consumer that has actually gone past a billboard, not a person who is 5 blocks away. So in this quest for precision, GPS-level location data is considered gold standard. Other sources such as cell phone tower data are much too broad or not accurate enough to be used for this purpose. And ideally, we want to know where this GPS data comes from so that we can be confident in it. The best way to ensure this is by going direct to the source, partnering with a company that owns an app that collects precise GPS data at scale. It should be noted that Link does both of these things, utilizing GPS data direct from the source. So let's try to visualize this for you. The yellow icons that you'll see popping up are individual bits of location data that we were able to collect around Union Station during the morning rush hour period. For those of you who have joined our presentation from outside of Toronto, Union Station is a large commuter hub where both metro trains and regional trains offload passengers into the downtown core. Each yellow icon represents a unique device, or its owner, as the device drops a breadcrumb of data and we assign it a location through the use of a latitude and a longitude. The yellow icons appear at different times due to the timestamps associated with this data. And as you'll see, the amount of people spike on the screen, which corresponds to heavier traffic periods associated with it being rush hour, but also due to the arriving trains and their offloading of passengers. This data is growing exponentially in its use and its popularity. For example, city governments have investigated using location data feeds to dynamically program their city streetlights to alleviate traffic congestion. Think about it. Why have traffic lights on regular 30-second intervals when you could dynamically respond to an incoming train full of passengers and divert city traffic to less busy streets? But let's get back to advertising challenges. Let's go back to that previous example of people getting off that downtown Toronto train. What if we could focus our attention on just one of those yellow icons and zoom that map out? Knowing their mobile device ID, we could track that person over time, seeing where they go after they got off the train, or maybe where they were previously, what stores they go to, where they work, where they live, and what out-of-home placements they might have gone past. It's not a what if, it's what we're currently doing. Now, in order for this product to exist, we went out into the market and formed some strategic alliances. The Link product leverages the expertise of 2 leading Canadian companies in their respective spaces to create a fully baked integration solution. Through our partnership with Pelmarks Corporation, we're able to leverage best-in-class ad tech and access gold standard first-party mobile location data from the Weather Network mobile app. This allows us to know with confidence that Link campaigns are targeting consumers that have actually gone past out of home with a high degree of confidence. In this space, quality of data is paramount. For out of home, in order for us to know or create the context that a consumer's device has passed an out of home location, we use a polygon. These act as capture areas or a virtual perimeter that allow us to contextualize relevant location data. We've created custom polygons across our 24,000 plus locations. These capture areas mimic the sight lines of opportunity of a face. As consumer devices are dropping location data breadcrumbs, there's an opportunity to gain location data that reflects the out-of-home locations people pass and by extension the brick-and-mortar retail locations that consumers visit. Moving on, let's talk a little bit more about the strategies associated with integrating link into your out-of-home campaigns. I'd say that there are two main strategies or reasons to integrate. The first goes back to core principles of advertising, in that exposing your consumer to your message through multiple touchpoints generally produces the best results. I would call this the holistic media approach. Adding a secondary touchpoint allows us to continue your brand's message to maximize the chances of a positive outcome. It simply isn't enough to hope your message works in the first venue or the first time a consumer sees it. Generally, a consumer needs to be exposed to messaging with frequency, and if we're able to do this across complementary media types, we're able to drive media spend efficiency by leveraging the strengths of each media type while also reducing their inherent weakness as well. For example, mobile ads are generally smaller formats which can be considered intrusive by a user. Contrast to that, out-of-home assets are large, provide impact, and they sit in the subconscious of awareness. Leveraging out-of-home's ability to prime the brain, users are much more likely to engage with mobile advertising. In the opposite relationship, while out-of-home is a one-way discussion with the consumer, mobile ads allow for interaction and an avenue for purchase. Link allows two complementary media types to serve messages to a consumer versus planning out mobile and out-of-home campaigns independently of one another. If they aren't planned together, you may hit your target group with both media types, but it's largely an unknown. Link seeks to solve this challenge. Now, it's important to note that many objectives can be satisfied within this overarching strategy, from awareness plays to campaigns that seek to create engagement. The second strategy for integration lies in mobile strength in providing data. Out-of-home has traditionally struggled, along with the other traditional media types, in the ever-increasing world of show me the results. But when we integrate mobile on top of out-of-home, we're able to overlay mobile metrics onto out-of-home campaigns. Now, this is typically the space that many look to as the first strategy, but I want to caution and I want to note that data is never a silver bullet to all objectives or any challenge. This is also true to the data that Link provides. Now, this brings up a really important best practice. Always sit back and reflect on your campaign's objective, and only select data that is relevant to your goals. If not, you run the risk of looking down false flag data rabbit holes that you might not have intended to prior. Identifying your objectives early on in the planning process will maximize your chances of a good story outcome. Alright, so we've talked about what mobile location data is, who we work with in order to access it, and the main reasons to consider incorporating Link into your out-of-home plans. So I think now it's a good time to see how this actually comes together in an example. In this theoretical example, there are a number of billboard locations selected for a TD Bank campaign. We turn on the polygon tracking for all of the locations once the creative has been posted. And let's say, for example, that I as a consumer am driving down the road with my phone in my pocket and the Weather Network app installed. Now my phone is constantly dropping location data breadcrumbs, and it happens that one of those is dropped within the out-of-home's polygon. Our system is constantly monitoring these virtual perimeters, and once we notice a device going past, we capture it. This data is then stored within our partner's mobile data management platform, including the phone's unique identifier code, or ad ID. This is that set of code unique to each phone that we had talked about earlier. We then go out into the programmatic marketplace and look for mobile ad inventory to serve to these people. We do this by leveraging our partner's mobile DMP, looking for matches between that ad ID of a consumer we had collected going past out of home with ad IDs of impressions that we have the opportunity to buy. So in this example, a week later, I'm on my phone within an app that allows advertising. Our buyers notice that there's an opportunity to bid on an ad to a consumer who had gone past out of home, based on my phone's ad ID matching what we have in our system. And in the event we win the bid against other buyers, that ad is served. In terms of mobile ad formats, all mobile formats are included through the Link program, including standard mobile banners to drive low-cost reach, full-page interstitials that allow for engagement, or other units such as interstitial video. And this process continues for all the devices we've captured as we continue to message these individuals through that campaign. It's also important to note that we're continually refreshing and updating our pool of devices to target new people who are driving by out of home, effectively growing the campaign the longer it is in market. I hope that gives you a decent idea of how we serve mobile retargeted ads to people who have passed by out-of-home locations. Again, if you have any specific questions on any of the content so far, please leave a comment and we'll be sure to respond post-webinar. Now, I mentioned one of the strategies for including link on top of an out-of-home campaign was to provide some data. So let's get to some of the metrics available based on a link campaign. There are two types of reporting that we can provide: reporting within the online space and reporting within the offline space. For the online space, we're able to provide standard mobile metrics that you would be used to seeing if you've purchased mobile advertising in the past. These would include delivered impressions, clicks, spend, click-through rate, cost per click, and the amount of unique devices captured within the campaign. Now, for campaigns that included video, we would also provide video views as well as metrics associated with video completion rates. The metrics that you would be interested in would largely be dependent on your campaign's objective. So for example, if the campaign was based solely on awareness, we would be less interested in click-through rates or cost per click and would focus mostly on general delivery of your campaign. And when we talk about the offline world, or the real world, we're really talking about foot traffic attribution. Simply put, foot traffic attribution analyzes the impact of a campaign on in-store visitation to a client's brick-and-mortar locations. Depending on a client's objectives, this can be invaluable data in understanding the impact of a campaign. The way we are able to track this is quite simple. We utilize the same two things, mobile location data and polygons, to track consumers who have been exposed to a campaign in the real world and see where they go. When we execute campaigns with foot traffic attribution reporting requirements, we place polygons over all of the brick-and-mortar locations a client may want to be tracked to. Once a campaign is over, we look at all the devices we've been able to expose messaging to and compare that to the devices we saw at client locations. We are then able to match up these devices that have been both exposed to advertising and subsequently went to a desired brick-and-mortar mobile location. So let's take a look at some of the metrics available with foot traffic attribution. First, we're able to provide the total number of unique visits to brick-and-mortar locations of those exposed to your integrated campaign. And as there might be multiple brick-and-mortar locations within each campaign, we're also able to provide unique visitation by location. From that group, we're also able to provide a sense of consumer dwell time, or how long they actually stayed within your location. We're also able to provide visitation data related to the time of day they were there, as well as the day of week they were there. Finally, we're able to provide a visitation lift metric, which looks at the relative impact of your campaign's ability to drive increased visitation from what would normally have occurred. A lot's involved in creating this metric, but for the purposes of our webinar, we've created this metric by comparing the visit conversion rate of those who were exposed to your campaign to a control group that was not exposed to advertising. I'll share with you now some case studies from successful executions of mobile integration. The first case study we'll look at is a national QSR campaign that ran large format out-of-home formats across Canada. The client's objective was to generate awareness of a new brand play they were releasing into the market. They brought together mobile with out-of-home to serve messages unique to their formats. So in the case of out-of-home, messaging focused more on the overall halo message of the brand, while the mobile component leveraged a more tactical delivery message as the consumer could order direct from their phone. In terms of the online reporting, the campaign captured just over 260,000 unique mobile devices in the campaign, delivering 2.4 million retargeted mobile ads that received approximately 9,400 clicks. Getting to the foot traffic attribution side, although the client had mobile messaging that focused on delivery, the ultimate goal was to drive more business through its traditional funnels, in-store. So of the roughly 260,000 people exposed to the integrated campaign, we tracked approximately 13,500 unique consumers back to their brick-and-mortar restaurants. In those visits, Saturday was the day where people visited the most, with lunch hour being the most popular time. Additional data points, including dwell time, showed that 47% of visitors spent between 5 to 10 minutes in store. And in terms of the campaign's impact on driving increased visitation, data showed a positive 5% lift in visitation, a truly great story. Now, just one more thing before we move on to our next case study. I wanted to touch on a great metric and a story that actually wasn't included through Link, but rather through our research department. I wanted to mention this as it's partially a plug for our research services, but it's also kind of a best practice. Whenever possible, it's best to loop in your sales team as soon as possible. This allows them to pull together various resources to provide maximum value to you post-campaign. In the case of this QSR brand, not only did we see positive campaign metrics through Link, but we also gained valuable purchase consideration and intent metrics through an independent awareness study performed by research. Ultimately, this was a great story of combining mobile and out-of-home to achieve a client's goals while providing valuable data points to understand out-of-home's effectiveness. Okay, let's move on and take a look at one last case study. Let's take a look at a campaign that ran within the automotive category. We'll focus on Toronto, one of the markets that the brand ran within, throughout a 3-month campaign window. The objective of the campaign was to generate awareness against a business audience, which is why office towers were chosen. Foot traffic attribution through Link mobile retargeting was included due to the nature of the business. Dealerships within the cities wanted to know how many people were ultimately coming to their dealerships, regardless of objective. In terms of reporting, the campaign captured just over 155,000 unique mobile devices in the campaign, delivering 1.4 million retargeted mobile ads that received approximately 3,600 clicks. Getting to the foot traffic attribution side, of the roughly 155,000 people exposed to the campaign, we tracked approximately 920 unique consumers back to their brick-and-mortar dealership locations. This roughly equates to a 0.7 conversion rate of consumers exposed to advertising and ultimately appearing at one of the dealerships. A small number at first glance, but set against traditional click-through rates or traditional online success metrics such as website build and price, having almost 1% of consumers exposed to advertising show up at a dealership, literal bums in seats, it's a really great story. Again, similar to the QSR example, we were able to provide day of week, time of day, and dwell metrics to the client. Now, one thing not shown on the slide for confidentiality reasons were visits broken out by individual dealership. Reporting provided justification for why out-of-home was utilized. Mostly located downtown, the out-of-home locations drove success for all dealerships, regardless of if they were in the city or not. This is obviously a huge data story for out-of-home when you have multiple brick-and-mortar locations or franchisees to support. Showing how out-of-home helps everyone is important. Lastly, when we looked at the impact of the campaign at driving increased visitation, the campaign generated a positive 7% lift in visitation to dealerships within the market. This 7% lift equated to 98 additional visits to the brand's dealerships that were caused by advertising. Once again, this is a really great story of combining mobile and out-of-home to achieve a client's goals. I wanted to end today's webinar by highlighting some of the key points and best practices discussed today. The first is knowledge of data is key, as not all data is equal. Mobile location data can come in different forms and in different ways, but GPS-level data is gold standard. Always ask your vendors what types of data they're using for the challenges you're giving them, and ultimately where it's coming from. Second, Link is available across all of Pattison's out-of-home products, with the exception of underground media or moving vehicles. Third, Link is based on a CPM buying method and is ultimately dependent on your out-of-home plan. Once the locations of an out-of-home plan have been finalized, we're able to estimate the amount of devices that will go past your out-of-home buy and the amount of retargeted mobile impressions we'll be able to serve using historical look-back data. That said, we can still provide proposals based on out-of-home plans that are still up for your consideration, but note that your plan may change depending on revisions to your out-of-home campaign. Fourth, and this is kind of a no-brainer, align on your objectives prior to your campaign. Choose to only include data when it aligns to the story that you're trying to tell or understand. If you don't, you risk chasing false flags of data, which are never a good thing. Fifth, foot traffic attribution is generally best suited for larger campaigns. The larger the campaign, the more data we're able to collect, which allows us to provide more robust and confident post-campaign metrics. Within this point, foot traffic campaigns are also best suited for client locations that are standalone buildings or at least within distinguishable building areas. Tracking to a car dealership or a large grocery store are excellent examples of appropriate locations to track back to. On the opposite side, tracking foot traffic to a client's location within a mall would be a poor application of this technology, as GPS struggles to understand height. In this case, we may be thinking we've collected a visit when the consumer was actually in the store above or below in the mall. And last, contact us early and often to help us drive maximum value to you. Contacting us early allows your rep to drive maximum value by leveraging all of Pattison's resources and assets. This concludes our webinar on the basics of mobile retargeting through Link. We encourage you to reach out to your PATTISON Outdoor sales rep to learn more about this technology and how we can best tailor a campaign that fits the needs of your brand. Also, please keep an eye out for future webinars from our Digital Innovations Group, where we'll discuss the continuing evolution of our media landscape, including topics such as purchasing out of home programmatically.